The Caribbean looked peaceful that morning. Sunlight danced across the waves, nothing seemed out of place. But the radar screens told a different story. Silent threat was approaching, and the U.S. Navy was ready. For hours, small Venezuelan warships maneuvered aggressively. Jets screamed over destroyers, testing every rule of engagement. One mistake here could have ignited a war. What happened next would expose the gap between rhetoric and reality. Asterisk, the sun rose over the Pacific, in a wash of gold and pale blue, illuminating the gentle swell of the sea. Aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt, sailors moved through their morning routines with practiced ease. Coffee mugs steamed on deck. Laughter echoed from the mess hall. And the hum of engines was a constant, soothing pulse beneath the ship's steel bones. Far above, the horizon seemed endless, a serene expanse of water and sky stretching to infinity. For a moment, it felt like the world beyond this steel behemoth did not exist. The ocean was a place of calm, of rhythm, and repetition. Prepped jets for training runs. Crewmen checked radar systems. And a squadron of helicopters spun lazily in the morning light. Everything was normal, safe, predictable. But calm is fragile in the waters of geopolitics. Single ripple can become a wave. A shadow can become a storm. Over the next few hours, that fragile peace would fracture. Signals on the radar flickered. Unidentified vessels approaching from the horizon. They were not just a few fishing boats or cargo ships. The numbers were significant, organized, calculated. By midday, the first warning messages reached the bridge. Fleet unannounced had encircled the carrier at a distance that was unnervingly close. The waters that had seemed so tranquil now carried an unspoken threat. The sun's reflection danced off steel hulls that were not friendly. The silence of the ocean became a tension-filled vacuum, broken only by the quiet commands and low murmur of analysts scanning screens. This was not an act of open war, but it carried all the intensity of one. The surrounding ships belonged to a nation that had been quietly rebuilding its navy for decades, investing heavily in anti-access area, denial capabilities, sophisticated missile systems, electronic warfare suites, and swarm tactics designed to overwhelm even the most advanced carrier strike groups. The economic desperation of their regime had been masked by propaganda and calculated restraint. But now, it was visible in every calculated maneuver. This was the first step in a high-stakes geopolitical gamble. The country in question, long isolated and economically strained, had cultivated an image of strength far exceeding its capabilities. Its leadership relied on ideology to compensate. For systemic weakness, the populace had been told they were invincible. In reality, resource shortages and technological gaps had left them dangerously exposed. Yet arrogance can sometimes compensate for weakness, at least in the opening moves of a confrontation. A miscalculation, a single bold move, and the world could watch a disaster unfold in real time. Earlier that morning, an incident, reckless and humiliating, had set the stage. A routine reconnaissance drone, launched near the periphery of international waters, had strayed too close to the carrier's defensive perimeter. The drone was intercepted, then released again in a provocative loop. It was a demonstration of intent cloaked as an accident, but the message was clear. They were testing limits, probing defenses. And the carrier's crew had noticed. Every movement, every radar blip became a question. Are they preparing to escalate? Within hours, superior U.S. naval forces had adjusted course, bringing additional assets into the area. Guided missile destroyers, equipped with the Aegis combat system, created a protective ring. Electronic warfare officers monitored signals for anomalies. Every radar ping, every radio transmission, every satellite feed was scrutinized for intent. The modern battlefield was no longer just guns and bombs. It was a war of information, of data streams, of electronic signatures. A misstep could ignite conflict before anyone even realized the war had begun. The encircling fleet moved with precision. Their electronic countermeasures designed to blind and confuse. Jamming signals disrupted communications, while simulated attacks tested the carrier's defensive protocols. Every maneuver was a statement. We can reach you. We can challenge you. The carrier's IS are intelligence, surveillance. Reconnaissance assets were working overtime, identifying ship classes, missile capabilities, radar ranges, and vulnerabilities. Every decision on the bridge was informed by layers of data, interpreted against a backdrop of history, political tension, and the thin line between restraint and aggression. On the second day, close encounters escalated. Patrol boats skirted dangerously near helicopter flight paths. Fast attack craft performed sudden maneuvers meant to intimidate without direct engagement. The air was thick with unspoken threats. Even a single miscommunication could trigger defensive rules of engagement, unleashing missiles or jets in a scenario no one truly wanted. It was brinkmanship in its purest form, silent yet lethal. Meanwhile, back-channel communications hinted at a hidden objective. Publicly, the encircling nation claimed it was protecting maritime borders, conducting routine exercises. Privately, intelligence suggested an attempt to assert influence over regional allies, to test us resolve, and to signal power to proxy actors. Russia and China watched closely, their own forces poised to exploit any misstep. Iran's naval presence in distant theaters mirrored the tactic, a global chessboard where pieces moved quietly, invisibly, and sometimes dangerously close to conflict. The days stretched. Jets conducted high-speed passes above the encircled carrier. Electronic warfare operators detected attempts to infiltrate communication networks. Aegis-equipped destroyers created kill zones around the fleet, ensuring any missile launched from a threatening vessel would be tracked and neutralized. Every step, every calculation was a testament to restraint. The carrier's true strength was not in striking first, but in surviving, deterring, and projecting calm competence. Information warfare compounded the tension. Social media and state news outlets spun narratives of aggression, of defiance, of imminent victory, yet reality on the bridge was far more measured. The carrier's crew understood that perception often drives policy as much as action. Managing the narrative was as critical as managing missile ranges or radar sweeps. By the fifth day, the encircling fleet began to withdraw, not with fanfare, but with deliberate, cautious movement. There was no declaration, no announcement. The world watched through eyes sharpened by intelligence feeds, satellite images, and reporting. The immediate crisis had passed, but the lessons lingered. It's a minor incident, a misjudged maneuver, and history could have been rewritten. The ocean returned to its deceptive calm, waves glinting under the setting sun. In the aftermath, analysts would note the imbalance of power, the role of arrogance, and the quiet mastery of restraint. They would reflect on modern warfare's silent realities are electronic warfare and the quiet yet deadly choreography of ships and jets that never fired a shot. The event became a case study in caution, in patience, and in the thin margin separating order from chaos. As night fell over the Pacific, carrier moved under starlight, engines humming, radar sweeping, communication lines quiet. A silence returned. Yet it was a silence heavy with remembrance, a warning to all who might test boundaries too aggressively. In the calm after the storm, one truth endured. The seas remember, the skies watch, and the smallest ripple can become a tidal wave.